And hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. My name is Mpho and I've got Tim Delace with me. I don't know if you're happy, if you're sad. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. Yeah. I'm glad the Test Series is over. I'm glad it's done and dusted, and it's like behind us now. We know some kind of a new start is coming. So yeah. Well, it was interesting times, but otherwise all good.
That's good to know, Tim. That's really good to know. Yeah, because a lot of South African supporters are not happy. Really not happy. They don't know where the cricket's going. They don't know what's happening. They hear this thing called SA20 and everything else. But we're going to talk about SA20. We're going to bring out a podcast tomorrow, just for before the game starts. A couple of hours, like 12 hours before the game starts, so that everyone gets a flavor of what to expect coming up in the SA20. But we are the number one South African cricket podcast. Remember, you can advertise on this podcast. Just email me at mpho@onewebsite.com. And we can advertise your products. We can do live reads and everything else for your podcast. We are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as an audio, even Anchor Podcasts if you are into that. We've covered the Android and the Apple type of situation, and then we're also live on YouTube as well as Twitter and Facebook. So please do check us out on those platforms. Your interactions are very much obliged. Please do subscribe to the YouTube channel when you get the chance. Let's just grow this platform. So today, Tim, we were going to talk about the Test Series preview, but this morning we got news that Proteas is retiring from international cricket with immediate effect. He's 33 years old. He's represented South Africa in all three formats: 32 20s, 27 ODIs, and 3 tests. How do you feel about this? Because I'd like to congratulate Dwayne on an incredible career, a great career for the country. How do you feel about this?
Uh, it's the right move for him. It's
Mm-hmm.
the right move. He probably wasn't going to get back into the South African side in any of the formats, if we're honest.
Mm-hmm.
We know where we are in terms of the T20s, and that's where his best came from. His best numbers, his best performances with the Proteas came with the T20s, particularly when he came back after nearly becoming a coal pack. So I think it's the right time for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got another 3-4 years, maybe 5 years on the T20 circuit, so he's got the freedom to do that. As you say, good solid career. He always gave it his all. So yeah, I think it's good for both parties. Good for South Africa need to look
Forward.
someone with a bit of a fresher outlook, and he needs to cash in on the next on the twilight of his career.
Well, look, you already got all those dollars from the IPL 2 years ago. So I don't
He
know how
needs to
much
cash
more
in
does
more.
one want,
You can
but
never stop cashing in.
we can never have enough. And to a certain extent, I kind of felt like when I read the press release, I kind of felt like it was a career of a guy who always never had a definite answer. From the selectors, from the coaches, from everything else. He was always coming in and out of the side. We're always looking for someone who could bat better than him in that all-rounder spot. I kind of felt like in our search for those guys, we always went back to him to a certain extent. In this last World Cup, this last T20 World Cup, we went back to him. And then so I kind of feel like he was, yeah, obviously, possibly felt shortchanged. There was him and Chris Morris were fighting for a spot. Chris Morris then went away and they used him a lot. I'd love to have seen him play more test cricket. I think we would have used a guy like him as a number 7, as a third bowler, as a third seamer, or even a fourth seamer in our teams. No, not this year, but like in 2019 when Butch was taking over. He did try him and it just didn't work out, but I would have wanted a longer run. His batting let him down. I think we were expecting someone, and I think this is the problem with South Africa. Jacques Kallis is long gone, but we're still searching for that guy who can bat and score 5,000 runs for you, and take 300 wickets. I don't think we're ever going to get that guy. I think everyone's looking to Vian Mulder as that guy, and I don't think he is that guy. I think if whichever one of Vian's disciplines becomes stronger in the next year, that's the one we need to go and fall into, and just hope that the other one is good enough to keep him in the side and keep him going. And to a certain extent, I think for me, that's what Dwayne's career was. Great servant for the Lions. I loved watching him play for the Lions. I always thought he was the number one all round in the country, and he was for a couple of years. It's just we're always looking for that guy who can bat, rather than just saying, "Okay, dude, give us 40 or 30 or 40 whenever you come into bat. Give us 30 or 40." In obviously limited overs competitions, we tried to make him be that guy to take us in the end, and he's a good striker of the ball. He has a good enough strike rate in T20s. I just felt that obviously with the way we were playing, he was always not going to get an opportunity to bat. But as a bowler, he was okay. I think there were better bowling all rounders, but he was more leaning towards the batting side. Well, he was a bowler who could bat better than everyone else. So I kind of feel like I'm not hurt. I'm happy for him. I feel like he was just underutilized, or he wasn't utilized well. And it comes with the communication, it comes with the plans, it comes with everything, and it's not just like, dude, you didn't take enough wickets or you didn't take enough runs. There's a coaching side to it. There's and all these other selection side, and he did well with what was given to him, with all the uncertainty, especially around that all-round spot. And to a certain extent, you don't want Marco Jansen to fall into that trap, but I think Marco's a much better bowler than Dwayne, that everyone just is taking the bowling and saying that he's going to be your third seamer, and you still need to find another all-rounder, which then it's fine. So for me, that's essentially what Dwayne Pretorius. But we're not here to talk about Dwayne Pretorius. We're going to talk about that Test series. So Tim, South Africa went into this Test series. We thought we were hoping we could burgle one game. We thought the batting was obviously on a high into nothing, and that's where the difference between both teams are. The bowling attacks are slightly similar, even though you could say Australia bowled much better than South Africa, and they had that home ground advantage. But South Africa held their own from a bowling perspective. Obviously, as the series went on and mentality started to drop and head started to drop, it became a little bit more of a wider chasm. But the bigger issue in this Test series was the batting. We've spoken about this left, right, and center. And Dean, I remember we talked about this against England. Is 2-0 with the draw a fair reflection of where we are, or were we supposed to be whitewashed?
Nah, we were supposed to be whitewashed. If that had been played for another, let's say another session, I reckon I reckon we would have been curtains. Thanks for coming. Despite how well, I actually thought that we actually showed for the first time in ages some fight in that second innings in the last test, which was refreshing. But no, I think Australia deserved the 3-0. We were certainly lucky that we got away with that with the draw. Massively favoured by the rain, of course, and helped by the rain. Yeah. But look, we were outplayed in every single facet from ball one, the first day of the first test. Every single day we were outplayed. There wasn't a single moment where South Africa were in control of any of the test matches. There were half an hour periods where maybe South Africa were evens. That sort of thing. 10 minutes from a lunch break, we were evens, and then we would lose 2-3 wickets. So we were never actually in front of Australia at any time.
No, and I get you. And is it a question of Australia being the best test team in the world, getting back to that early 2000s team that dominated world cricket, and we've just come against a team like that? Because our team can beat India at home when India went to Australia and beat them. We took a game off England in conditions that are slightly more foreign than what we expect in South Africa with an inexperienced batting lineup. Is it that, or is it just South Africa are on a downward trajectory and there are much more bigger problems? than the fact that Australia are just too good?
I think it's slightly nuanced. So I think South Africa are really poor at the moment. They don't know where they are as a test team. They don't know their roles within the side. You just have to look at Klaasen batting at number 3. It was just, I mean, I don't know who tells Klaasen to bat at number 3 in Test cricket. I can't imagine where that came from. But South Africa are a side that just don't know where they are as a test side. As far as Australia, they are outstanding at home. They really are outstanding at home. They could beat anybody at home. They've got 2 big tours coming up. Ask me that question after how they've done against India in a couple of months and the Ashes next year. If they win both those series, or go unbeaten in one and win the other, then I might be persuaded to say this is a world-class, outstanding team in all parts of the country. At the moment, they're our top side, but their topness comes from their home advantage. They really are outstanding at home.
Which to a certain extent is the fallacy of the World Test Championship, right? You get a predetermined list of teams that you're playing. You don't play everyone. You don't play everyone home and away. You have a cycle where you play some people at home and some people away. And to a certain extent, you don't get a full reflection. And it's not like obviously the Premier League or anything else. So you don't get a full reflection of the lay of the land. You don't get a full reflection of where this team is. And I think this is where South Africa fell into the trap in 2022. Beating India at home is great. An Indian team that went to Australia, but we're extrapolating. We're like, oh no, they beat Australia away from home. They gave England trouble. So these guys are on an upward trajectory. But to me, it felt like it was a false dawn. I felt like, and if you look at the numbers, and we've spoken about this, right? We only scored above 200 like once, and that was in a winning effort. Obviously, we lost the game at Centurion, and that looked horrible. Our bowling wasn't great. Our plans weren't great in that first game. At the Wanderers, we were lucky. Not necessarily lucky, but I kind of felt like we got the rub of the green in terms of the pitch and the weather. And I think India just beat themselves, and a lot of the Indian fans listening to this will say that. But it was a lot tighter than what we expected early on in the year last year. And you thought, yeah, they won a tight battle. They're on the upper trajectory. But we went to New Zealand. We lost the first game. The excuse was they were jet lagged. They won the second game, quite handsomely actually. And then you kind of chalked that off like, there's not a lot of issues. But the batting lineup still had issues. And then you got to England and we thought, okay, no, here's the true test. And then we win that game at Lords. And you're like, actually, not that bad. Are these guys that bad or are they just okay? I'm talking about the batters. Like if you talk through if you listen to what I've just spoken, you'd be like, you guys are being a little bit harsh. Australia, obviously the best team in the world. But is this batting what's gone wrong? Because we were on a high, even coming out of the England series. We're like, 2-1's okay. England on the up, they're playing a different thing. In the next year's Ashes, they're going to blow Australia away with Bazball. What's gone wrong? Is it Mark Boucher leaving? Is it just the situation that everyone's now batting back to Cinderella's left the ball and it's after midnight and we're now back to our normal selves?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I think it's bigger than any one man. I think it's bigger than any one individual. So South African fans, we are probably going to get a new coach. Not 100%, but we are in one format or other. We're going to get some kind of a change. That's not necessarily just going to bring change. The problems are far, far deeper than that. The problems are right down at the domestic level. So they're not playing the best kind of cricket. SA20 is going to be quality cricket. I guarantee it. Yes. I guarantee it's going to be quality cricket, quality competitiveness, and the South African players involved are really going to be challenged. They are really going to be challenged against the players that they are playing against. That is not happening domestically at the moment. And that is in part because the Proteas don't play enough of those games. So your Joshua Richards is not coming up against Rabada and Nokia.
Yeah.
He needs to be come up against Rabada and Nokia, even if it is just for half a day, you know. So Rabada, you're going to bowl to lunch. Then you're going to come off and you're going to... That's fine. You've given Joshua Richards 2 hours of intense cricket, of what is expected of him at the next level. It's all down to... And the other thing is the mental aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And Summons admitted it. He's admitted it after the second test. He said, the guys are struggling mentally. The guys are struggling mentally. I've been saying in this podcast for ages, they need a mental...
But Tim...
Yeah?
Isn't that what Mark Boucher's brought in for? The reason why everyone went for Mark Boucher over Enoch Nkwe, the reason why guys are looking at Mali Bongwe Maketa's qualification or his experience and going, no, he's not experienced, that's why we're losing. Isn't that what Mark Boucher was brought in to do? To make this team mentally tough, to make them in his image. What happened to that?
Yes, and he failed in that respect. There's no doubt about it. He failed in that respect because he wanted to run the show. And you can't. It doesn't matter how good you are. You have to have good people involved. I'm gonna use a football analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Klopp had outstanding people when he started at Liverpool. He had outstanding personnel. Over the years, those people have left, they've gone to other places, and Liverpool are now struggling. Klopp can only do so much. He can't do everything. You need to have a solid backroom staff. Why are England doing so well? Because England, not just Brendan McCullum. Yes, it's a change in attitude, but it's Brendan McCullum and. It's all of the people buying into that system, that way of thinking. Nobody at the moment is buying into it. You can see by the way they play, they didn't buy into the Mark Boucher way of thinking.
So somebody listening would say, but obviously Mark's not there now.
Yeah.
Right? So doesn't that then change everything? Because I kept on feeling in this test series, and this is why I'm asking this, right? That this team still had the Boucher characteristics and it lived on in Dean. It still had, well, this is what we used to do. You're just an interim guy, Mali. This is where we're going. And Mali rightfully lent a lot on Dean. Was it that? Did you feel that sense that this team was still like shackled by Mark, even though obviously you've spoken about how he failed in making them mentally tough, but I kind of felt like it was a team that was stuck and they were doing the same thing that Mark had taught them to do. Even the selections were the same, you know. But yeah, what do you think of that?
It's a side that talks about change. You hear about the press conference. They talk a lot about it. They talk about a lot about change in attitude, change in mindset, change the way that, but it never actually materializes. Now, why is it not materializing? Because there is not a buy-in from the system. They might tell you that they're in, but if you look at the performances and the way they are playing, they never bought into that way of thinking. You had guys who would play. They would play that way for half an hour. Then they would go, you know what? I don't want to do this till lunch. I want to hit this ball out into square leg, and then they do that, and he get caught at mid-wicket. So I've said it all along. Whoever gets the job has to have the backing of Cricket South Africa, as in he wants X, Y, and Z as his backroom staff, Now, he may not be able to have X, Y, and Z, but he's got to have the next best. He's got to have, there's got to be, you can't just go, well, we can't give you this, so we'll go and pick somebody who just happens to be a former player, and we'll see how it goes. That's not how it works.
Well, that's where we hope. I think SA20 comes in. I think because obviously his team had no brand. The brand this team played was tough cricket. It was guts it out as hard as you can, and some teams will wilt, some teams may not, and when they don't, try and be respectful and not be embarrassed. And in England they weren't embarrassed, but here they were. And I'm going to go into the stats now, and we'll talk about them. We'll talk about who's performed. But from a batting point of view, South Africa's batting averages were just horrible. Simon Harmer, one game, scored 47 runs. He had an average of 47. Temba Bavuma, an average of 37. He scored 185 runs. He was the highest scoring batter in that series. He had 150. Carl Verreynne had 250s, scored 168 runs and an average of 33. I think he was the best batter on tour. He just didn't bat in extra innings, and I think if he did, he would have surpassed Timber from the runs perspective. Sadal Advia, and then after that, it's a massive drop. It's an 11-point percentage drop. That's how bad it is. Goes from 33.6 to 22.4, and a Sadal Advia 22 average, then Kazonda with a 20 average. Sadal's the only other batsman to score over 100 runs in this tour. Everyone else, 81. Tiana Steyn, 40 runs at an average of 20. Klaasen, 37 at an average of 15. At 18, he only batted once. Keshav Maharaj, 86 at an average of 17. Marco Jansen, 77 at an average of 15. And Dean Alga, 56 runs, an average of 9.33. Tim, is this the time for Dean to leave the team? There's a lot of people asking for Dean to leave the team. Many people are saying, yes, he should leave because his captaincy was poor. Can I put forward that his captaincy was poor because his batting was poor? That mentally he was shot as a batsman and his captaincy just went to the wayside, because Dean's has been okay. Like even India, he couldn't put a foot wrong in those last two test matches. At Lords, he was perfect. Even that test match at the Oval, there was nothing I could be like, okay, dude, like you made an error. He made an error in Manchester, but to a certain extent, I thought Dean's captaincy was fine. But is it time for him to leave?
This is what happens when you are under the pump right from the get-go, and there is no let-up. When you play Australia, this has happened to many oppositions.
It happened to Hansi Cronje in 2001, and they got whitewashed.
They attack the captain. They know that captain is a strong leader. They know that Dean Algar is the axis of the South African side. If Dean gets runs, South Africa gets runs more often than not. They know that. So they know if they can target him, the battle is won. Battle is all but won. And that's exactly what happened. I thought his captaincy was very poor, but as you say, it was because of the pressure created. That pressure is not going to be there in February when they play against the West Indies. It's not going to be there. I backed Dean to score runs and to show better captaincy in that. I'm quite happy with his captaincy in a general sense. I've been quite pleased with his way. I like the way he leads from the front, not just from the runs, but his mannerisms. His mannerisms are, follow me and I will lead you. And you can't help but feel as if that is the right way to go, even if it's not, but that is what he conveys. So, look, the pressure is there. Everything is against him. The runs, the age, the way the South African team played, the way the top six played, the way that there was so little fight back. There was so little fight back until the second innings of the last test match. So everything is against him. If I'm, and I say that, I would stick with him. I say that now. However, if I'm a new coach if I'm a brand new coach, so let's say they ask Mully to step down and send him back to the A side. If I'm a new coach, I may want a new face. I may want somebody who's going to be there for the next 4-5 years. I don't think Dean has got 4 or 5 years. At least in theory, that's what I would think. So
I'd sit down with him and talk to him about 4 or 5 years. But the problem is that who is that person? Because Timber is 32. He's my age, and you could go to him. But after what we saw at the ICC T20 World Cup with the whole social media wanting him to step down and do the honorable thing, does he have another 4 years in him with all the abuse? Because to a certain extent, there's a tale of two captains here, right? One captain performed horribly. Both captains performed horribly. One got a lot more abuse than the other. One got direct messages to tell him to step down. Dean obviously may not be. I think Dean's on social media, but doesn't get that. But the vitriol on social media is not as great, and that's another thing about the people on social media is that, I don't understand why Timber's getting a lot of flack. Well, Timber got a lot of flack for that, but Dean's not getting a lot of flack for this. And yes, he's fronted up, and to a certain extent, I'd want either one of Timber and Dean to continue for the next 4 years, because who else is going to come in as captain? Like, where's the new captain going to come from? And I don't want to hear this Aiden Markham slant, this thing. You guys may say I'm a hater. The man 9 years ago was when he won that world championship. 9 years ago. We've given him a run in the side for 7 of those 9 years. What has he shown us? And to a certain extent, we even gave him an opportunity to captain against India in an ODI series that technically didn't matter. And he got smacked leftways. He acted in the same way that Dean acted in Australia with his captaincy choices and everything else. It was like a cat on a hot tin roof. There's nowhere to go, nowhere what was going on. So to a certain extent, outside of the obvious, let's pick Aiden Markham because he's won the World Cup for South Africa before, who can captain him? Who could take this team for the next 4 years?
Okay, so I'm not going to pick a person because I know what that does, especially on social media. You pick a person like Markham, and you make valid points about Markham, valid points. I'm going to talk more broadly if I'm the coach. If I'm a coach and I have worked with somebody domestically, not necessarily played for South Africa yet, or maybe he's played a handful of games, but I know about his leadership qualities. Cricket South Africa don't know about them yet. I know about them. I know what he can produce. I'm going to build my team around him. We saw that with the change in England when they asked Joe Root to step down. And it was a sea change. It was such a drastic change. So you could see such a drastic change with somebody coming in, new ideas, a new way of thinking, a new way of, and a coach which believes in him, who's worked with him, who understands him. I'm thinking along the lines of Pybus. Pybus, who is in one of the shortlist in terms of taking over, he's worked with a lot of the players domestically. Okay, it's a while ago, but he has worked with. He understands a lot of the players in South Africa. So he might have somebody in mind who is maybe somebody who's not quite in the setup at the moment, who could come in and start, because they need to start afresh in one way or another in Test cricket. There needs to be a fresh outlook whatever comes forward over the next few weeks.
Is Timber not your guy? Is Timber not your guy?
No, because Timber is producing it in the runs. I don't want to affect that's what's working. Okay. Timber is producing the runs. So he is doing a good business. I don't want to affect that.
So you effectively are saying to me that there's a guy you can bring in the side who's because because obviously these captains are struggling front, so you need to find someone who you can back, and even if the run's not there, you're backing them because they can lead the side and captain the side.
Yes.
So that's an argument for Aiden. That's a left field argument to Aiden to be, look, we just want you to be captain.
It is, but I specifically did not mention a name
Yeah.
on purpose. But yes, it is. You could put him in that category. Yeah.
Like, we don't want your runs, we just want you to captain the side. But then my question's always been, is he that at that level? Under 19, he was captaining kids. This is men. And after what we saw in Australia, can he do this?
You sort of argued for me. For me, it's a no for Aiden. It's a no, predominantly mentally wise. Until that mental shift changes, until I see that man coming into the side with the confidence that we saw 4 or 5 years ago, it's a no. I need to see that first. Before I go and say, right,
So if
you
he wins SA20 for the Sunrisers EC, would you?
It's a start. It's a start. It's a start.
Okay.
Because you're literally beating high quality opposition.
You're beating.
It is high quality.
Yeah. So, okay. Cool. So let's play a game called Fill in the Blanks. Right. Top 6 batters for South Africa, the West Indies. Right, in the batting lineup. I'm going to fill in some of the things that people I think are going to stay. So Calverain at 6, wicketkeeper. I don't think you're going to change it unless you want to. Timber at 4, sitting in there.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Dean Alger in at the top because I don't think you can win a series against any team in the world, even Afghanistan, if your 2 openers are new and they have never played international cricket. So I'm saying Dean's there. So you got 3 spots. Number 2. Please fill in the blank.
This is a tough one. It's a tough one because after 2.5 test matches, Sar's not playing the West Indies. He's not playing. But that 42 not out. We talk about let me explain. We talk about these small kind of runs. These guys that are not significant runs, but they go away in doing like something. They go away in changing a shift in mindset, a shift in belief. The draw was all but sealed when he started innings. That is true. The runs by Maharaj and Harbour were far more crucial. But still, potentially, I think it is a 50-50 call. So I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to go with, I can't separate.
Okay.
It's Sarwell or Joshua Richards. It's a 50-50 call for me.
So we bring them into the squad. We bring them into the squad, both of them, right? How do you pick one?
So, do we have any 4-day cricket before that series?
We do. We've got 2-3 rounds. I think the Lions have 1 extra game, but there's 2.
Okay. If Joshua scores more runs than Sarwell, that's all. More runs. Joshua gets it. Simple.
Okay. Josh Richards.
Simple.
So Josh Richards at the 2, Sarwell. Because I saw that 42 and I was like, because we've been asking for guys to show us guts, to show us fight, to not let it go. And obviously Timber did that in the previous test. Now it was obviously Sarwell in this test. And to a certain extent, he's the only other batter to score over 100 runs. I know it's a very low bar, and I know it. I'm hearing myself. He's got 118 runs, and we'll want him to play against the West Indies. Okay, fine. But I'm a fan of SJ, 100% with that. Okay, cool. 3.
Oh, that's easy. That's the easiest of the lot. Keegan Peterson comes in straight away.
You bring him back.
Bring him back straight away. Assuming he's fit and he's got no problems there. He's straight in.
It's in that old brand, that old format of we've got a lot of guys who don't play. Okay, not saying that playing positive cricket is different to being a little bit more aggressive. So I'll say a little bit more aggressive, where the world's going. Australia have got the aggressive gameplay breakers, even though they've got Smith and Labuschagne and Khawaja, but they've got Warner, they've got Cam Green there sitting in there. Travis Head can accelerate the run rate. So, and obviously England play Bazball. So you still want to go around that. And because I like the Josh Richards pick because Josh is somewhat of an underhyped Aiden Markram. He's an Aiden Markram who never won the World Cup. Has all the shots that Aiden Markram has, but then probably not as talented as him, but can play the type of game you want with that whole Dean and Aiden foil that we were trying to get early on a couple of those years ago. So that's why I like the Josh Richards pick over Sardo, because Sardo's going to be gritting it out against Australia when I need someone to be a stroke maker. But to some extent, so KP stays.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody else that you wanted 3? Or you want to look at? No.
I mean, I would have looked at somebody like some Janneman Malan, but his, you can't pick on current
say
form.
this in the SA20 podcast that we're going to do. I watched Liam Alder have Janneman Malan for lunch.
Yeah,
like literally, I was sitting with our friend Lesejo, and so Faf goes out in the little warm-up game, and Janneman walks in. So if you're a Joburg Super Kings fan, Faf and Rees are opening, which is like a dream. But then obviously number 3 is Janneman Malan. So you're like, oh, this is so great. Whoever the captain was, because they've got these warm-up teams of guys who weren't picked, some under 19, some guys are like Luto is playing, and whatever it is. They bring on Liam Alder on the other end, at the golf course end. And obviously Liam is a left-arm spinner, and Janneman just could, like, there was 2 balls in, and he played it straight to the player at cover, on the up, on the back foot.
I thought he'd sorted out his spinning problems. I really thought he had.
And like literally, Lesejo wasn't gone for 5 minutes. She was like, I'm coming back. When she came back, I'm like, well, Elias Duplo is now in because your boy doesn't want to do stuff. So I'm worried about Janneman because it's like, okay, we'll throw Nathan Lyon, we'll bring in whoever English spinner you have in there. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. But if he scores runs, yeah. And then obviously Timbers at 4, 5. That's the last spot. Fill in the blank.
Ryan Rickleton. Ryan injured ankle Rickleton.
So you want them to have a conversation to talk about how they can treat the ankle, and to a certain extent that the liability may not be on CSA's book, and he's playing effectively. If he breaks the ankle, it's his own fault, and it's on him. You want that conversation to happen. So you assume it's going to happen. If it doesn't, because I don't think it's going to happen.
Then it becomes a little bit tricky. Then you start thinking about guys that are talented, and this is as good a time to pick them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm worried about scoring them.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about scoring Janneman Malan, for example, in a different format.
Yeah, he's an old man. Yeah.
Because an old man, he'll come back. He knows the scope. He knows what the deal is. You start thinking about somewhere like Haman. I can't physically do it. I can't physically go Haman Test cricket at the moment. I can't do it. I want to do it. I really want to do it. I really want to do the Australian thing and pick this talented guy that's got all the range shots, but I just can't do it. So I would then go, and he might not like it, but he can build his way up. I would then have to go with Tony.
At 5. Oh, that's
I'd have to go with Tony.
That's an interesting one. Tony at 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want Tony in the top. Tony in the top 3 in Test cricket is a non-starter for me. A non-starter. Okay. Yeah.
But I'd like that. I'd like to reward form. And so for me, Tony comes in. If Ryan doesn't, actually Tony should be in the squad anyway. But if Ryan can't be there, Tony should. Okay, I like the Tony at 5 because he's a little bit more aggressive, and you want someone who can break the game, who can move the game along. I'm taking Jordan in the squad, and Jordan's conversation, if I'm coach or whoever selector, is you've got 18 months. We'll reassess at the end of next year. You are going to play Test cricket for South Africa. Whatever runs you score at the end of 18 months, we'll reassess and see whether this is going or not. Obviously, we'll try to fix whatever problems arise. But I'm giving you an 18-month run in the side. You're young, fail. Failing is okay. But this is what I want from you. And to a certain extent, even with the guys I'm bringing, it's the same thing, but I'm not giving them longer runs. I'm giving them like until the end of the year because we only got 3 tests. Be like, look, here's an opportunity, take it. But failing is okay. It's not the end of the world. So essentially that's where the batting is. Okay, so we've got our top 6. Okay, cool. Let's look at the bowling a little bit. I think they struggled in Australia. I thought we went to Australia as fighting to be the number 1 bowling attack in the world, and my lord, those averages ballooned. Anouk Nokia an average of 31, Kagiso 32, Marco Jansen 50, Ngidi 66, Maharaj an average of 260. He took only 1 wicket in Australia, Keshav. Ngidi only took 2. Mark Jansen only took 4, and Kagiso and Anu took Kagiso took 11 and Anu took 7. We weren't going to win this Test series, were we, Tim?
Not with that. Not with those numbers. Not by a long shot. And again, the best bowler of the show was Unrick by a country mile, in my opinion. Consistently bowling extreme pace. That average doesn't do him justice. There's no doubt in my mind. That average does not do him justice. He could have easily had another 4 or 5 wickets easily. There wasn't a single Australian top 6 batter that found him comfortable. Everybody else, it becomes a bit more tricky. I don't think Jansen bowled that badly. Jansen had bad periods. He had bad spells where he just lost it completely. But I think overall, I think he bowled pretty well. What he will learn from this, though, is patience. Yes. He can't go for that money ball, particularly on those Australian pitches. When times are tough, just keep it economical. Just keep it straight. Just keep it straight. So,
he did 3.22 for him.
Yeah.
Arnold Nokia 3.39, which I think is the best, which kind of tells you his performance for him. Kagiso 4.54, Ngidi 4.26, Maharaj 3.77. I kind of felt there came a point where Dean just relied on those 3. He relied heavily on Kagiso and Arnold. He didn't want to give Lungi and Marco the ball. He was afraid at times. Because there was a point, like I'll go back to that moment in India, that spell that Lungi had, right? Pujara and was it Pujara? Yeah, it was Pujara and Kohli. They were there. It was just after lunch. You could have gone to Kagiso and Marco because they were bowling really well. But he gives it to Lungi and he gives him. It's like a gamble. It's like a risk that you take, right? And you're like, okay, Lungi's there. He's probably going to be economical. He hasn't had a greatest of days, and he gives you that spark. It's kind of felt like Dean kind of lost the trust of Lungi. Dean stopped trusting Lungi, and to a certain extent Marco towards the back end, even though I would have gone with Marco like from the get. I would even consider opening some spells or some post lunch or some sessions with him, because I felt that the Australians struggled with him, and I felt, yes, he was looking for the money ball and everything else. They struggled to play him, but I just was like, this guy needs. And if you look at the overs, you're like, well, they bowled similarly, but it was just like, guys, sometimes take Kagiso for his own good and bowl Marco.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to a certain extent, that was where I was at. But yeah, look, it wasn't great.
I think, I know this is going to be slightly controversial, but I actually think now is a decision for Kagiso. Choose your formats. I don't think he can play all 3 and the IPL and SA20. I don't think he can do that. He talked about it with Cummins, where Cummins said, the question was, when last did you bowl 150? Cummins said there was a spell against England right about 2018 when I really ratcheted it up. But Barder said, I haven't done that for years. The last time I did that, I was about 20. Those were, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that's what Barder was saying. The last time he bowled that quick was donkeys years ago. Now,
It'd be travesty for Kagiso not to play tests.
we don't need him to be 150, but we do need him to be better than he is at the moment. And for me, he's got to choose. Obviously, we want him to play Test cricket, so he's got to choose for me T20Is or ODIs. Internationals. He's got to give right up.
So,
for me,
I want him to give up ODIs, but after the World Cup, I want Kagiso to play tournaments. I want him to play bilateral series in limited overs cricket because we know what Kagiso can get. Like, he's that good, But I want him to play the tournaments. If he's going to play a T20 World Cup, he'll play the T20 World Cup. He'll play the one day, the World Cup, the big one, and then he'll play all these other T20 tournaments around the world. And I'll need him for 2 franchise games, 4-day games a year, and he plays Test cricket for South Africa. That's all I ask, and I think to a certain extent that's essentially what I want Kagiso to do. I like this thing again with England. He shouldn't be playing this little ODI and doing thing. He shouldn't be playing.
No, I agree.
Look, if you want to get him, we want to get us to the World Cup, you can do it with Lungi and someone else because I don't think he should play. And to a certain extent, he needs to rest. And he also needs to pick, obviously, because he only plays IPL and SA20, and then he plays for South Africa. So it's not like he's playing a lot of non-international cricket. It's just like he's played every single game. And
literally every game. It's like the only members playing every game.
So you wanted like an AB de Villiers-esque discussion to be like, okay, dude, you don't have to play every game. We know who you are. And everyone needs to become comfortable with it. And it gives us a chance to blood youngsters because South Africa know how to produce fast bowlers. We don't know how to produce batters.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to ask you the toughest question of this tour. Who's the best player of South Africa in this tour? Who was the MVP? If there ever was someone who was valuable enough to be called that.
It's Kyle.
Verena.
Okay. I thought when Kyle went here, I thought, okay, so the lack of movement will play into his hands, yeah.
Yes.
But I did think the extra pace of the Australian bowlers and Lyon is his record in Australia is just incredible. I don't know how he does it, but it is absolutely incredible. Coupled with Kyle's lack of foot movement, which still pops up occasionally. It still pops up. It popped up in the last Test match.
Yeah.
But despite that, I thought he played outstandingly in the series. He came in those 250s. Only guy scored 250s in the series for South Africa. And in those innings, he came in at very tough situations, and he took the attack to the opposition. He did not take the conservative approach. He did not say, we'll bat till lunch, we'll bat till tea and see. He said, no, we're going to take the attack to the Australians, and we are going to fight fire with fire. And that's his natural game. That is his natural game. That is it. That is what he's best at. We saw the best of Kyle in this series. He'll be disappointed he didn't kick on those 50s, but I was really impressed against a high quality bowling attack who outbowled South Africa by some distance. I thought he was hugely impressive. Hugely impressive.
What are the lessons that you're taking from this tour of Australia?
That Maharaj does not necessarily start against the West Indies. Not entirely his fault. Not entirely his fault. As we've said privately, Dean must take some responsibility with that.
Yeah.
If you just look at that last Test match, Harmer outbowled him. Harmer didn't get any wickets, but Harmer outbowled him in one Test match. Maharaj has played all 3, so he's got accustomed to the conditions and the way to play. As far as I'm aware, Harmer has never played in Australia. So, and Harmer's runs. Harmer was the longest innings by a South African batter in the series.
Yes.
On the tour. You say Harmer can't make runs. Harmer made runs. Those runs.
Is there a place for this team's best 11 to actually have Harmer and Maharaj, regardless of the conditions? Because you have your three
Potentially,
seams.
but potentially the West Indies. Potentially, the only
That's what I'm
problem
thinking.
is
I'm like both of them to like it's like Bangladesh again. I'm like, yeah.
and they've got a handful of left-handers for Harmer as well. The only question is, they're playing at the Highveld. It's not what you would call ideal for two spinners, but you could because of the West Indies, and they are like us. They are struggling for batters. They are struggling with that top six. You definitely could, particularly if you go. If we, no, not quite. No, you would have to go 6-5, wouldn't you? Ideally,
6-5. You wouldn't
want to get 6.
You wouldn't
Yeah,
go 2-3.
Yeah.
But obviously someone's not going to bowl, and that's my issue, and that's my thing with the 6-5 split. Someone's not going to bowl, and Keshav didn't bowl a lot in the first two tests. He bowled a lot in the third test, but between him and Harmer, the gap's very close. It was always close, but now it's like we might have to try Simon. To a certain extent, then I agree with you. But for me, my one lesson is: can somebody have watched how hungry the Australians are to score runs, and try and find that hunger to do that for South Africa? Because that's essentially what it was. Australia came in with questions. Usman hasn't converted in a while. Davey hasn't scored in a while, but it's like it's 100th test match. Wada. Obviously, Marnus and Steve looking good, but against Rabada, and rightfully so, Marnus didn't have a great series. But Steve Smith also didn't have great series, but it was like Travis Head, it was Warner, it was Kawaja. It was everyone else apart from the normal guys, and everyone else with the guys whose place in the side would be the first ones. If you want to drop someone on the Australian side, would be one of those three. And the hunger to score runs, to stay in 4 hours. I look at Marnus and I'm like, this guy's only been playing cricket for like 4 years. He's only done like 4,000 runs. He scores 1,000 runs a year. Can't somebody in South Africa be like, I want to do that?
The dude's obsessed. That's his thing.
Can we get someone who's obsessed? I know Dean's obsessed, and that's the thing. I can tell you, Dean will bounce back from this. Dean's probably going to score 100 against the West Indies in their first innings. That's how obsessed Dean is. But Dean has a ceiling.
Yeah.
Can one of these wonder kids that everyone's talking up, Aiden Markram, or even Temba to a certain extent, he's got a ceiling. But many of these other kids that are in there, or these guys in there, can somebody just be like, I want to score runs. I want to score 1,000 runs in international cricket a year. I played 10 years, 10,000 runs. I'm top 5 South African run scorer. And I retire a high and I'm done. Where's that player in domestic cricket? Where is he?
Oh, he isn't there. That's the problem. That is the problem.
And that goes back to our fundamental issue is they need to play they have to play 14 games. And you need to give someone a future. You need to show them that Test cricket has a future. Right now we're showing them that T20 has a future. But we need to show them that Test cricket has a future. You need to pay Test cricketers who play for South Africa more. You need to play domestic cricketers who play 4-day series more. You need to find a way to have a limited overs contract and a 4-day series contract. But to a certain extent, until you do that, you're not going to get a guy who's going to want to score runs. And that's been Aiden Markram's problem. That's been, to a certain extent, Carl's problem when he's starting out. A lot of the guys in the team's problem, right, is that they don't have that hunger to play red ball cricket. They love it. They want it's their bucket list. But it's not a situation where like Marnus and Steve, who are like, I'm going to score runs. But Marnus and Steve's little hunger carries even to the limited over stuff. They want to score runs. They have it's there. So where are those kids? Where are those guys? And that's why I'm okay to give Jordan Hammond that opportunity if he has that. I don't know how you determine it, but I want someone who's going to score runs, who's going to sit in there and be like, I'm not moving.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree entirely. And I think that's a problem that is ripe within the Proteas setup, because I get the impression on this tour, when guys got starts, they kind of said, well, we've done it. It's done it. It's done. We've got to 35. We've got to the half period. It's done. It's done. We've proven we can play. We can play Stark and Hazelwood. No. Watch David Warner. Watch him. Watch him score 200. The hunger is there. They're top 6. All average over 50.
Yeah, they're hungry for
all over 50.
And it's not an ability thing. It's just a mental thing. And it's a thing to be like, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going anywhere. Usman Khawaja, best believe he's pissed off right now for Australia not allowing him to score those 5 runs.
And he should be. It should be. And that's a good thing. That would be a good hunger.
And I'm sure even that team, he probably would have been like, guys, I respect that we want the team to move forward. Just give me 1 over. Just give me 1 over. I'm facing the next ball. Give me 1 over. You even give me 1 ball. Let me get to 200. Okay, maybe 2. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally what was missing. That's what Mark was supposed to bring this team. He didn't. And now we're stuck with a team that doesn't have that. And the only person who actually gets it is Dean, but he can't translate it to everyone else. And to a certain extent, Timber's there, but Timber doesn't have. He's got a ceiling. He's great.
He's got a ceiling. It's exactly it. Well said.
And he's currently playing to his above
to his ceiling. Yeah,
and we need players like that, but we want everyone else who's got a much better, the Ferenas, the Adams, everyone else who's a much better potential to sit there and want to score runs. Go score runs. Don't come here and be like, I'm a Protea, I've got a central contract, it's fine. Go score runs. But Tim, I think that's where we need to leave it. We've done our post-mortem. West Indies are coming up next. We've got many more podcasts. So thank you very much, my man. Right now it's going to be T20. You're going to be hearing strike rates and all these other random things that you don't want to hear because we're purists. But yeah. So let's end it there. Thank you very much, my man. And to everyone who's watching, thank you very much for watching. And yeah, we've got another podcast that's coming out tomorrow on the SA20. We'll be previewing. We've also got a guest coming up. So thank you very much. Goodbye. Good night. And le sale cacajizo.